But not only are we gonna go over the different handguns, ARs that I regret the most, but I'm also gonna talk about what I would get instead knowing what I know now. I will have a parts list available for everything that we're gonna talk about in today's video. First link in the description, also pinned in the comments, and then if you're watching this on your television, I'll put a QR code right up here. Gun number one that I regret the most is the HK VP9. I was actually just hanging out with Chris from 1911 Syndicate the other night, and we were talking about the VP9s, and it was funny because a lot of people tend to have a love it or hate it type experience with this gun. And what I mean by that is back in 2018, I saw this in a local gun store. When I first picked it up, it had a flat dark earth slide on it, but nonetheless, once I had the slide work done to it, we changed the Cerakote color. But it felt amazing in my hand. I thought that the ergos were great. It had a phenomenal trigger in it, and it was decently priced at the time, so I went ahead and made an impulse purchase and picked it up. When I went to the range, the gun shot phenomenally well, had zero malfunctions, everything performed flawlessly. But this gun had a problem that a lot of other 9mm guns simply don't have. Now, this is one of those guns where dry firing it, for me, feels awesome, but then when you actually get to the range, it doesn't feel quite as awesome. And this is kind of the part where other people that I've spoken with about it, where we have differing opinions. I feel like this gun is really snappy considering it's only a 9mm. I'm not saying that the recoil impulse on this is harsh or anything like that. I'm saying for the caliber, it's much more jumpy than other 9mm polymer pistols that I have. And so over the course of about a year and a half, I went into upgrading it, trying to solve that issue. The first thing I did was a set of Talon grips on the side because I didn't want to invest the money into stippling just in case it didn't really help. The ergos on here are amazing. It has additional back straps that comes with it. It also comes with different side panels to get a different palm swell if that's something that you want. However, the grip texture is lacking on this gun. The second thing that I did was I wanted to get a red dot put on here because I purchased this back when optics ready versions weren't available yet. So I sent this off to my buddies at Slideworks. I'll have more info about all this over at the parts list, but they went ahead, did an optic cut for me. They did some slide lightening. I figured if we decreased the mass of the slide a little bit, it would make the recoil impulse a little bit better. And then, although the trigger was amazing out of the box, I did decide to put a Lobos trigger in the gun, and it feels incredibly amazing. I did all that, went to the range, started shooting. Honestly, the recoil impulse didn't change very much. Now, I could go out and pick up a threaded barrel, throw a comp on it. I could invest in getting the barrel ported, but out of the box, even with the slide lightening, the increased grips, I wasn't really able to solve a lot of the recoil impulse issues that I had with it. Now, the last thing that I've done to it, which is something I've done in the last year, was I added a thumb ledge to it. And this comes from Align Tactical. They make them for a bunch of different platforms. And I actually really like these a lot. The biggest downside to them is you're gonna have to get a holster kind of molded around it, but it essentially replaces like your takedown pin. And it adds a ledge to it, which is awesome, and they're super affordable. I'll have info at the parts list if you want to check them out. Now, this actually did make a huge difference in the recoil impulse. However, at the end of the day, biggest reasons that I regret this isn't just because of that recoil impulse. The biggest reason I regret this has to do with the price, and these things are a pain in the butt to work on if you want to upgrade some of the internals or change out a trigger. You need like specialized tools to do so, and it's not fun to work on at all. And so because the price is high, because the recoil impulse is kind of high, and because it's a pain in the butt to work on, I think there is a better alternative to the VP9. A better alternative, in my humble opinion, is going to be the Walther PDP SD Pro. And when you first look at these guys side by side, they almost have the same exact silhouette. They kind of both have a high bore axis. They both kind of have a similar ergonomics. They almost have similar trigger guards. However, the Walther PDP Pro SD model. This is the compact. Don't worry about the comp, it doesn't come with that. I actually made a complete video about this. If you want to check that out, I'll throw a little link right up here. And note, for those of you guys that are watching this on your television, I'll have a QR code so you can scan that and watch that video if you want to. These come in for about $150 cheaper than the HK VP9. They also come with higher capacity magazines. They also come with a magwell. They also come with way better grip texture. They also come with pretty much similar ergonomics. These are also optics ready out of the box. Now, I understand that there are optic ready VP9s available today, but their optic system is kind of weird and it doesn't come with any plates. This comes with at least one plate. You have to send off for it and it's free, but you do get one plate of your choice. I feel like this one has a far superior trigger out of the box. And for the sights on here, it uses standard Glock sights. And the good news about standard Glock sights is those are typically fairly affordable sights. They're easy to take out with a basic sight pusher tool, which makes this a way better option in my humble opinion if you want something that kind of looks like a VP9, but I feel like performs way better and you get more for your money. Now, the second gun that I've regretted the most is the CZ P07 Tactical that I picked up a few years ago. I bought this because my friend Chris from the Honest Outlaw channel, I didn't know him at the time. However, he had talked about how much he liked this gun. And I think he's being 100% honest about loving that gun a lot. However, when I got this gun, I just didn't like it very much. The first thing I noticed about this is although it has a little grip texture right here and a little bit on the indexing points over here, all this section here was very slippery and I felt like it was just kind of hard to manage the recoil on it. Now, something you're gonna need to understand about me, my hands tend to sweat a lot. Tend to sweat more than other people that I know. So grip texture is always going to be something that's very important to me. I can't stand it when companies put a ton of bald spots on the grip of the gun. It drives me insane. This grip texture might be perfect for someone like you, but it wasn't perfect for me. The CZ P07 has a double action, single action trigger. So when you pull it here, it'll pull the hammer back and release it forward, or you can pull it in the cocked position. This one, you can either do it as a decocker like this, where you can decock it and carry it in a half cocked position, or it also comes with this external safety in the box that you can install on here if you wanted to carry it cocked and locked. Double action, single action triggers are kind of a mixed bag in my experience. What I mean by that is typically the single action pull when the hammer is cocked is always amazing. But what separates a good double action, single action trigger from a kind of a crappy one to me is how the double action pull feels. And this one was pulling at like 11 or 12 pounds. It was insanely heavy. The downside to it was when I would pull the trigger, I had practiced dry firing this so much and I still couldn't pull the trigger without jerking the sights around. It was extremely annoying. Not only was the trigger heavy, but it was also very gritty and jittery. To better understand this, let me show you what I'm talking about up close. All right, so what I want to focus on is not how heavy the trigger is or how light it is. I want you to watch how this trigger, when you're doing a double action pull, it's very jerky or jittery. Notice how the hammer is just like doing like this as I do the pull. Now, this is way better than it was when I originally got the gun, but nonetheless, it's still pretty jerky and jittery despite how much money and parts we throw at it. So because of all those issues, I decided to send this one in to be customized. I understand the new P09 Nocturnes now come optics ready, but the P07 and the original P09s did not. And so I sent this one off to Primary Machine. They did not only an optics cut, but they did some slide work. They fitted their barrel to it, and they did some upgraded co-witness height sights on here, and they moved the rear sight dovetail so that we could do a Glock rear sight on it. They also did their compensator in it. Now, once I got this back, it shot so much better than it did before. But there was a couple of problems still that needed to be addressed. Number one, the grip texture was still slippery. Obviously, I did nothing to it. I never even picked up any Talon grips or anything like that. However, the biggest thing that was bothering me was despite getting the Cajunized trigger kit for this, although it was lighter, it was still very gritty and it was still very jerky and kind of jittery the way I showed you earlier. That kind of bothered me because I'm like, man, why pay for a trigger upgrade if it's just going to be a lighter version of crap. Since that point in time, I picked up this flat trigger shoe. I'm so sorry, man. The guy sent me the trigger like over a year ago, and I forgot the name of the company, but I'll research it and have it over at the parts list if you want to check it out. I took all the trigger components out and polished them down really well, and now the trigger is a lot smoother than it was before, but it's still not as smooth as another gun that we're going to talk about in a second. So what would I get instead? If I was dead set on getting a CZ double action, single action, compact handgun, well, number one, I would get a CZ P01 compact. Now this one is the Omega edition, and unfortunately they did discontinue these back in 2023. However, they still offer P01 compacts, just not the Omega version. Internally, this thing is virtually identical to this thing, but the trigger on here is far smoother. Earlier, I showed you the P07 trigger. Now this one has absolutely nothing done to it. It's exactly how it comes from the factory. Now watch the difference in the jitteriness of this hammer as I pull the double action. So much smoother. Additionally, because this one is a metal framed, you can buy upgraded grip panels for the sides. So if the texture isn't enough, it's very easy to kind of just do that. Now, because of the new P09 Nocturnes came out, I will have to test those in the future and do a video to see how they compare to this one. However, before the Nocturnes came out, these things were going for about 400-ish or something like that. And these were going for about 500-ish or something like that. Neither one of these were optics ready, so you'd still have to send both of these out to get an optic put on them. However, with this one, the trigger was far better out of the box. Therefore, I feel like it's worth the extra money to pick up the one with the smoother trigger, and then if you want it lighter, you can get a spring kit, because this trigger is still quite heavy. Kind of like this one was when I first picked it up, except this one is much smoother. And what makes all this even crazier is, although Primary Machine did all this work to the gun in exchange for me to make videos for them, and I didn't actually shell out my own money for it, when I think about this in terms of if I did spend my own money, I feel like after I did everything to this one still doesn't quite shoot as nice as this one. So total invested in this is well over $1,000. And so that brings me to my next point. If you want something that's like around the 400 to 500 mark, get something like this. But if you were already gonna spend a little over 1,000 and pimp it out, you should probably check out this guy, which is the Shadow 2 Compact. Now, I did grab this one from the kind folks over at Brownells, and I do want to give them a big shout out because they actually sponsored today's video. And the reason I even bring them up in this video is they have these right now, and I'll have more info at the parts list about them, but you might be a little bit impressed with the price that's on them over there. So that's all I'm going to say about that. There'll be more info over at the parts list if you want to check that out. But a big shout out to Brownells for hooking us up with the Shadow 2 so that we can not only do the review, but also make today's video. Now, the Shadow 2 Compacts, they come optic ready from the factory. They don't come with any plates, and I haven't done my full review on this yet. The only thing I've done to this, aside from adding the optic, is I put in one of these double action, single action flat triggers. I'm just testing it to see how I like it. Now, the reason that I say you should probably just get something like this, even with this flat trigger in here, there is more money invested into the P07 than into the Shadow 2, which makes things kind of crazy. And this one is worlds beyond either the P07 or the P01. It's a compact frame. You got the light rail for the light, it's optics ready from the factory. And although I put this flat trigger in there, it didn't change the trigger pull at all. This trigger pulls, its double action is around 6 to 7 pounds. It's not that heavy, but the biggest thing about this trigger is it's incredibly smooth in the double action pull. Let me show you up close so you can see that. Now you've seen the P07, you've seen the P01's trigger pull, but let me show you the Shadow 2. Obviously I got a different trigger shoe, but that's it. It doesn't affect the trigger pull whatsoever. So watch. This one, the trigger is just better than the other two by a long shot. Not only is it incredibly smooth, but it's a lot lighter. And so the biggest downside to the Shadow 2 or the Shadow 2 Compact is going to be their pricing, right? Especially if you want the optics ready model. I think you can get these between 12 and 13-ish hundred. And then if you want to get like the full size Shadow 2, these can be had for a little bit less just because they're not as new. my humble opinion, I like the full-size Shadow 2 a little bit more than I like the compact, but we'll cover that in more detail when I do the full review on it. But nonetheless, the reason I bring up the Shadow 2 Compact as a good alternative to something like this is, as I mentioned, I got more money, including the cost of the gun, in this guy than I do into this guy. And at the end of the day, this one is a far superior gun with a far superior trigger, and it's so much easier to shoot. Just some things to keep in mind. So now we're gonna get into the world of metal framed handguns that were originally designed as polymer framed handguns. And I've actually made a complete video about why most of them are crap and most of them don't really give you a benefit. If you wanna check that video out, I'll put a link right up here. Now the third gun, I don't actually have it anymore because I borrowed it to make the review. And that's gonna be the Rock Island Armory STK 100. And I did a review on that back in 2021. In a nutshell, it was a metal framed Glock 17 clone. And at first it seemed like something that would be pretty awesome. But having a metal frame theoretically increases the weight of the gun, which theoretically reduces kind of muzzle flip and stuff like that. But once I actually started testing it, it turned out to be one of the worst handguns that I tested the entire year of 2021. And here's why. Number one, during testing, the front sight flew off. I simply Loctited it and put it back on. But if I would have been shooting out in the desert and that would have flew completely off, I would have lost it and had to buy another sight to put on the gun. The second thing that was the big problem with that gun was the grip texture. As I mentioned earlier, my hands tend to sweat a lot, and the grip texture on there was just simply lackluster. Now, the original STK 100 frame was a clamshell design where it took two halves, they smushed them together, and then they screwed them together with screws. It just felt weird. You could see the seam and it felt cheap in the hand. It had a lot of spots on it that were very slippery, and on the back strap, they had like these serrations that went along the back strap to kind of hold it in your hand. But the problem was the serrations went in the wrong direction. And so when that gun started moving in your hand, those serrations almost made it more slippery. The other problem with that gun was the optics cut on there. It came with what they call the Dr. Noblex optic cut. At that point in time in 2021, there wasn't very many good optics that had that footprint. There was a couple of Vortexes and that was it. In today's market, at the end of 2024, there's a lot better options for that optic cut, but when I reviewed it at the time, there just wasn't. So I was very disappointed in that optic cut. Additionally, that optic cut disappointed me because when you did remove the plate to add a red dot, you would lose your backup iron sights on the rear. And there was no other option to get a plate so that you could retain your backup iron. The biggest downside to that gun was in 2021, when they first released, they were going for 550-ish bucks. And I thought that was very expensive for what it was, because there was a lot of other Glock clones or even factory Glocks that were just simply far superior to that for the same exact price, if not less. Now, since the release of that gun, the price has decreased substantially. I've seen them as low as $375 at some places. I'll have some info at the parts list if you want to check that out. But we have to give Rock Island Armory credit here, because since 2021, not only have they redesigned the STK 100, but they've expanded their lineup. They came out recently in the last month or so with the STK 100 Ultra, which is like their full-size Glock 17 size. They came out with the STK 150, which is their Glock 19X size. Then they have the STK 200, which is essentially a compact, same size as a Glock 19. But the most important thing about all of these is they've improved everything that I complained about with the original STK 100. They've improved the frame design. No longer do they do the clamshell. It's now a single piece grip. They've improved the grip texture tremendously. They've also added indexing points or thumb supports for helping mitigate recoil when you're shooting it. They've also improved the optic system, so it's no longer the Dr. Noblex system. It's actually an optic system that can accept multiple types of footprints for optics. And then they've also designed it so that when you add an optic, you don't lose the rear iron sight, so you still get backup irons. And most impressively, not only did they redesign these, but they're coming in $50 cheaper than the original STK 100 was when it first launched. So I haven't tested those yet, but they are some things that are worth looking looking into. But here's what I would get knowing what I know now. These that I would get instead don't actually come with a metal frame, but there are some aftermarket companies that making metal frames or in the process of making metal frames for these guns. But these metal frames from all my testing work really well. The first one's gonna be the Zev OZ9 that has the Icarus Precision grip on here. These Icarus Precision grips are amazing. They come in different colors. This one just happens to be green, and they completely transform the way the gun feels in your hand. Additionally, I like the SIG P365X Macro. Icarus Precision also makes a metal grip for this one that works phenomenally well. Now, this is the Springfield Echelon. Had great experiences with this gun. This is gonna be like your full-size Glock 17 size gun, but Icarus is coming out with a grip for these as well. Don't have it yet, haven't tested the grip for this one, but these are three alternatives. The biggest downside to all three of these is they are gonna cost a lot more than the new redesigned STK lineup from Rock Island Armory. So I will do my best to get some of the redesigned STK guns to do a review on in the future, because at that price point of $499, if they're good, it's gonna be hard to beat. Now, the next metal framed Glock clone that I tested came from a company called Matrix Arms. In that video that I told you to click on for more information about metal frame guns, I actually talked about these. These were actually sent to me by Matrix Arms. Now, this is the Matrix Arms MX-19, and this was a gun that I was really looking forward to, and I thought I was really gonna like it. The downside was I had the complete opposite experience of what I expected. I went into more detail about this over in that full-length video on metal handguns, but number one, they're incredibly expensive. These are over $1,000, I believe, or like 900 or something like that, depending on what you get done to them. The second biggest thing was this gun, I was only able to get through 1 or 2 magazines out of 600-700 rounds without a malfunction. I even sent this gun back to the people at Matrix Arms, had them work on it, and they sent it back to me. I got through like 1 or 2 mags without a malfunction, and then the malfunction started up again. They also did a piss poor design on the slide lock slide release right here, because if you look at a normal Glock or Glock clone, they have a little bump right there to prevent you from accidentally hitting the slide lock when you're shooting. This one doesn't have it, so you get premature slide lock all the time when shooting it. Additionally, it just seemed to have poor quality, not just because of the malfunctions, but when I started opening it up and looking at it internally, the trigger bar was grinded on by somebody at the factory, and they never even smoothed it out. It just looked horrendous, and I ended up smoothing it out myself. But for a gun that cost over $1,000, you shouldn't be running into those problems. And finally, the worst part about this is, and this is gonna be the case with a lot of metal frame guns that started out their life as polymer frame, is when you start getting metal frames, with the exception of Icarus Precision, I don't know what kind of magic they're doing. When you go to a metal frame that's aluminum, you don't get any increased weight typically. It's usually the same weight, but then you get this frame rigidity. And a lot of the recoil impulse is absorbed in the polymer frame, so it doesn't translate into your hand. So a lot of these guns are gonna have higher recoil impulse, at least on felt recoil, than their polymer counterparts. And that was exactly the case on this one. Because of all those things that I just told you about earlier about metal framed guns, not especially aluminum framed guns, not really adding a benefit, the next metal frame gun that I regret is the Smith & Wesson M2.0 metal. Now, the M2.0 metal comes in a few different variants as of today. This one is the OG version that came out, but they also now have a competitor model, which has a longer slide, and they also have them in different colors, like flat dark earth. I think I've seen an OD green. Now, this one didn't experience all the same problems that my other metal guns had, or that I spoke about previously. This one was just simply too expensive and had no real benefit. I didn't really get more felt recoil with this one like I did other metal frames, but they removed the frame texturing that goes right here, and I had to add grip tape, which made it harder to hang on to. Additionally, these things are like $800. It didn't come with sights to co-witness with. Now, as of today, they do have a version that has co-witness sights that has a threaded barrel, but they don't have a non-threaded barrel version with co-witness sights, which I don't know why that is. But nonetheless, this thing was like 800 bones. I had to spend $100 on suppressor height sights so I could co-witness with the optic, and it just didn't feel any better than the polymer version. And the polymer version is not only like 300 and something bucks cheaper, but it included optic height sights from the factory. And so, if you're looking at the M&P metal, if you're not gonna look at the competitor version, these have no benefit over the polymer version, at least in a practical sense, in regards to how it feels to shoot it. It's actually easier to shoot these because they have more grip texture, especially along here. Although this one was sent to me by the kind people over at Brownells, if I would have spent my own money on it, I would have regretted it, and I would have wished I would have just got this one instead. I'm done talking about metal guns now. Let's move on to other guns that I've regretted in the past. Now, this one is a Glock clone that came from Lone Wolf. It's called the LTD-19, and I reviewed this one, I believe, early 2022 or 2021. I don't remember which. This was a very affordable Glock clone that they came out with in that year, and I had nothing but problems with it. This one, for whatever reason, there was an issue with this barrel. In the video that I did on this one, I was losing track of where my bullets were going. When I was shooting steel, they were just kind of going all over the place. And then when I would pick up a different Glock or a different Glock clone, my rounds were hitting everything that I aimed at. And so I couldn't figure it out for a long time. Ended up doing a barrel swap on here with just another Glock barrel that I had laying around, and that fixed that issue. So that told me out of the gate that the one that I got had an out of spec barrel on it. The next thing that they did that I didn't care for was they didn't offer these with any types of optic cuts. And these at the time of release were a little over 500 bucks. And I felt like there were way better options available, like the PSA dagger and stuff that had optics cuts for way cheaper. But nonetheless, it was kind of disappointing. The next thing that I did not like about this was the trigger that originally came on it was one of the worst Glock triggers that I'd ever felt in my life. I ended up putting in an Overwatch precision trigger, but honestly, I think there's something wrong with this trigger housing that's in here because it still doesn't feel quite right. Nonetheless, this thing was kind of a fail for what it was. And unfortunately, it was kind of expensive for what it was as well. However, similar to what Rock Island Armory did, Lone Wolf has kind of done the same thing and done a redesign, and this is called the Lone Wolf Dusk 19. Similar to Rock Island Armory, they did a much better job in their redesign than they did on the original one. So this isn't part of the LTD line like that other one. This is a whole nother gun. They have improved slide design. They got an optics cut. It also came with optic height sights from the factory, way better grip texture, and a good thumb ledge right here for helping mitigate recoil. And the trigger didn't feel like crap out of the box. Now, something to note about Lone Wolf frames that I forgot to mention on the LTD is on the front of these slides, the front of the dust cover here has a little piece of plastic that will come out. And that means that these frames can accept both Gen 3 and Gen 4 slides. Kind of something interesting. No other companies I know of are doing that with their Glock frames. I went to the range with this thing and I've been shooting the crap out of it, and this isn't the complete review, but this is an amazing Glock clone, especially for their price point. The downside to the price point is they tend to jump around. If you can find these things for like 500 or less, I'd say get it. I have seen them for around 700. I wouldn't say get it for that price. If that's a little too pricey for your blood, if you are looking for a Glock 19 clone that has a lot of bells and whistles, I highly recommend this guy. Now, this is a build I did at the end of 2022. I'll put a link right here for that video. This is essentially a Palmetto State Armory complete slide that came with the 507C. I got the SCT manufacturing 100% frame. If you take out this upgraded trigger and substitute it for an OEM trigger, take off the light, take off this compensator and magwell, I was able to put this whole thing together with the red dot for 500-ish bucks. So prices have changed a little bit since 2022, but it isn't a huge increase or anything, and things go on sale a lot. I'll make sure I have a lot of info about this over at the parts list. But what surprised me the most about this was this thing shoots almost better than my OEM Glock 19s. This shoots just as good as my Shadow Systems MR920. And for the price point on this, if I was gonna get a Glock 19 clone, it would either be like a PSA dagger or a dagger hybrid like this one. Now let's get to the AR-15s, and there's not actually that many AR-15s that I regret. Most AR-15s that I've received, either by purchasing or a company sending out to me or loaning me to do review on, I've had great experiences with them. However, there have been a couple exceptions to that rule. Now, the first AR-15 that we're going to talk about, I don't really regret it because at the time I made the review on it, there wasn't really a better option from the company, but I think like less than a year later, they came out with a whole new line that desecrated this. And the only reason that I even would regret this is because they still offer this gun and and the newer one, but this one is like the same price and you get none of the features that the other one gets. So this is the PSA custom AR-15. In a nutshell, this is a basic AR-15 that has some upgraded parts on it from PSA. So this one comes with the Cerakote work. This one comes with a upgraded ambidextrous 4590 safety, and it comes with PSA's flat face trigger. At the time, these were right around $900 to $1,000. And in the original review I did on this, I was like, okay, that makes sense, because the non-custom version of this from PSA was about $550. Typically, if you want to get your receivers and handguards Cerakoted, that's going to be about $300. Then if you want to upgrade a trigger, that's going to be about $100. If you want to do a 4590 safety, that's going to be about $50 to $60. So I was like, okay, the math actually works out if you were to buy like the bottom shelf version and then upgrade it later. So at the time period that I reviewed this, I thought it was a decent deal. However, now I'm singing a different tone because there's better stuff that's just simply available now. If I was really wanting to get something on the budget side, I would just get the standard version of this, which, like I said, they range anywhere from $475 to $575. I'll have more information about it over at the parts list if you want to check it out. But I feel like you could take that additional $400 to $500 and allocate it into some better upgrades. The biggest thing that I don't like about this one is this handguard, and I'll show you what I mean up close. So this handguard has these 3 bolts that go through it to clamp onto the barrel nut. The biggest downside to this handguard is they thread into bare aluminum. There's no reinforcements or any steel nuts on it for them to bite into, and that can strip out very easily over time. And then that kind of brings me to my next point. If you were to just pick up the basic version of this for like $550, and then you want to get like a better handguard and maybe a better barrel and bolt carrier group, you're going to start pushing that price up pretty quickly, up to about, I don't know, close to $1,000, depending on what you do to it. And if that's the price range you're gonna go to, then I highly recommend you just go a different route. Route number 1 that I would take, if I was gonna start pushing that $1,000 mark, like on getting something cheap and upgrading it or whatever, would be like a BCM Recce 14. Now, the BCM Recce 14s, if you get them as like a complete deal, they can kind of be a little bit expensive. But if you just get a complete upper, which comes with their incredible bolt carrier groups and a charging handle, if you get something like that and get yourself just a basic complete lower or build out the lower, however you want to do it, you can get away with the BCM that has not only some top-notch quality control, but has cold hammer forged barrels, stuff like that, for like $1,200 to $1,300, depending on where you source the parts from. But even if BCM isn't the way you want to go, about a year or so ago, Palmetto State Armory started offering something called their Saber line. And I've gone into a lot of detail in this video right here that you can check out. So I'm not gonna go into all the detail that I did in that one, but essentially they came out with an AR that has all the upgrades that you could almost ever want for an AR, including good handguards, upgraded triggers, Spring-Co springs, micro-best bolt carrier groups, ambidextrous Radian charging handles, Radian 4590 safeties, and different buttstock and grip options, and their castle nuts are properly staked. Additionally, you can get them in different lengths. It's like 13.9 all the way up to like 18, and on 13.9, 14.5s, they're pin welded. Cool thing is they got a lot of different muzzle devices on the pin weld version. So if you want a chemo, or if you wanted a surefire quick detach, or if you wanted some other type of quick detach, they have those as well. And you could literally get these for sub $1,000. The cool part is a lot of them have cold hammer forged barrels. Some of them are like this one. Now this one, the PSA portion of it is just the upper. The bottom is actually a PWS complete lower, but this upper here was a complete upper that I picked up from Palmetto. This one has the FN cold hammer forged barrel, has the Geisley handguard that has reinforced steel inserts for the sling swivel quick detach. This one has the Geisley gas block that is cross-pinned. It also has the quick detach. I forget which muzzle device this is, but it is chemo. It also comes with the Radian charging handle that is Palmetto State Armory branded. Why do I bring this up? With this upper and a complete lower, you could literally get something that is almost as good as a Geisley Super Duty. Notice I say almost, didn't say completely. And you can pick that up for like $1,300 or something like that. And honestly, I think that's absolutely incredible. Like I said, I'm not gonna go into all the details, but some of these companies that make quote unquote cheap guns are starting to add things to their uppers and their offerings that simply rival some of the very expensive companies that are out there. Which brings me to the next gun that I kind of regret getting. Now, the next gun that I regret isn't one that I paid for. The company actually sent it to me, and I actually am friends with the owner of this company, but I still couldn't give them a great review. And that's gonna be the Firearms MDP9. Now, the MDP9 is their roller delay, bufferless 9mm AR pistol that allows you to shoot it in the folded position. On a lot of people's reviews on the early models that came out, they had nothing but malfunctions with them. And the reason that a lot of people had problems was Arms actually says you should use OEM Glock mags with this instead of aftermarket. But they didn't tell that to a lot of the people that were reviewing it. They did happen to tell me, but despite whether I tested it with OEM Glock mags or aftermarket mags, mine had no problems. And you might be wondering, well, why does it get kind of a negative review? Well, it's not a negative review in regards to how it functions. It's the price point for what you get that kind of bothers me on this. That's nice, your roller delay, you get a tri-lug design for your quick detach for suppressors. It's side charging up here, and you can reverse that charging handle to the other side. Here's why it bothers me. This didn't even include a brace. I don't even know if it comes with a brace today because these launched when nobody was selling braces. Comes with a basic non-ambidextrous safety, basic trigger, basic controls, and they want $2,500 for these things. Now, I have seen them on sale for less, but that is a lot of money for a 9mm AR pistol. And so that kind of disappointed me because I'm like, man, you know, one of the reasons we do 9mm AR pistols is, well, at least for me, you get the same manual of arms, same controls, so you can practice doing your manipulations, your mag changes, all that stuff for a lot less than doing it with 223, 556, or even 300 Blackout. These use Glock magazines, and the benefit to that is Glock magazines are plentiful, and if you have a lot of Glocks or a few Glocks, you probably have a ton of Glock mags. Another reason you would want something like these, if it's not to practice on a cheaper, is these would make good self-defense guns for backpacks or even in your vehicle. And so having something that's small, can be shoot in the collapsed or folded position, that's 9mm, is pretty advantageous depending on how you look at it. Unfortunately, for that price point though, I just felt like that was way too much for what you get. And what I recommend instead is this guy. I know, it looks almost exactly the same. This is the CMMG Descent. Now this one is chambered in 300 Blackout, but they also have them in a ton of other calibers, including 9mm. And the cool thing about this one is if you get the 9mm, you can get it either as a Glock mag compatible, or you can get it where it has standard PMags that have the 9mm internals. What that means is you could use one lower, say a 556 upper on this lower, shoot like normal. Right? Then when you want to practice, you could throw in your 9mm upper, then you could put in your 9mm conversion mags and shoot for cheaper. This one is almost identical in every single way. It's not roller delay. This one they call their radial delay. At the end of the day, they work differently, but they accomplish the same goal. That's the main thing to know about roller delay, radial delay. This one comes with a upgraded ambidextrous 4590 safety. This one comes with an upgraded Trigger Tech trigger that is amazing to shoot. The only downside to this trigger is it can be a little bit easy to outrun. This one does have an ambidextrous mag release, and it has upgraded controls on the bolt catch and bolt release. It also has a side charger that can be flipped to the other side. What makes this one so much better than, say, the Arms is this one is available in like 15 different colors. That might be an exaggeration, but like 8 or 9 colors. The Angstat is only available in like 2 or 3 colors. This one is available in like 5 or 6 different calibers. Over here, this one's available in 1. This one has an entire ecosystem, so you can swap uppers on it and shoot different calibers. This one's just 1 caliber. But the best part is this one's like $600 cheaper. You get a lot more for the money with this one than you do with this one. And that's why, although mine works flawlessly, I would regret buying this one and then realizing that this one was available and you get more for your money. Now, the next gun that I regret getting, I don't have it anymore because I sent it back to the company. If I would have asked, I'm sure the company would have let me keep it, but I just simply didn't want it. It is the Daniel Defense DDM4 version 7. The one that I reviewed a little over a year ago was the 14.5 pin weld, so it's called the SLW. Now that gun is typically $2,300, unless it's on sale somewhere. And when I unboxed that gun, it felt like $1,100. And I did a complete breakdown on that video that you can watch. It's on my channel. I don't think I can add any more video pop-outs up here. I think I'm limited to 5. But if you go to my channel and you search "never buy these guns at full price," that's the video where I did the review on the DD-M4 version 7. Now, Daniel Defense is kind of known for 3 things, really. They're known for their really good handguards, they're known for their good cold hammer forged barrels, and they're known for their quality bolt carrier groups. Their bolt carrier groups have some good QC and they use good materials on them. Their barrels are cold hammer forged, which are machine gun fire rated, and the handguards lock onto their receivers very well. The problem I had with the DD-M4 version 7 was it felt really cheap in the hand when I first pulled it out of the box. The feeling in the hand didn't even feel as good a quality as this PSA hybrid build that I did right here. First thing I noticed was the Cerakote work on it was very shiny and slippery. It didn't have that matte or that satin feel. Once your hands started sweating, they slid across it. I actually don't own another AR that was that slippery. The second thing I noticed was the upper and the lower had a lot of play in it, at least on the version that I tested. It came with a basic mil-spec trigger, basic controls, so it wasn't ambi. It didn't have any special safeties or anything like that. Additionally, because I had the pinweld version, I noticed that they didn't offer any options on getting a different muzzle device. And if you know anything about pinwelding, although those muzzle devices can technically be removed by a gunsmith, there's always a risk that it ruins your barrel. And so it had no quick detach for any type of suppressors on it. And I felt like for $2,300, that thing better have all the bells and whistles on it, but it had none of them. The gun actually shot phenomenally well. I had no problems with it, but it was just basic for what they were asking for. And I did say later in that video, if you can find them on sale for like $1,600, $1,700, it might be worth it. But at the $2,300 that it is on normal pricing, I didn't think it was worth it. Additionally, my buddy Mike from Tactical Considerations, if you guys don't know, he literally lives a few miles away from me and we hang out all the time, go to the range together. He picked up the new M4A1 Ris 3, which is their new ambidextrous version. He got the gun, had all kinds of problems with it. I don't remember everything, but I remember he sent it back to their lead armorer at Daniel Defense, and they said they fixed it, sent it back to him. It wasn't fixed. He ended up sending it to the School of the American Rifle, and he made a video on it, and essentially the entire lower was out of spec, and Daniel Defense didn't even want to fix it. Now, I'm not trying to pick on Daniel Defense. Daniel Defense is a gun I wanted to like, but I just haven't had any good experiences with Daniel Defense as we speak. In addition to that, on the Golden Web YouTube channel that does the full auto burn downs, none of their Daniel Defense guns have really made it much past 700 rounds. I think one of them did like 600 something rounds, one of them did 700 something rounds, and they got a Bear Creek arsenal on that channel that outperformed them. So I say all that to say this, I just feel like they're a little overhyped. Okay, I'm not trying to talk down about Daniel. So if you are the kind of person that's thinking, hey, I might want to pick up something like a Daniel Defense, I'm in that price range of like the $2,000 mark, I'd highly suggest taking a look at these two first before you make that decision. Number one is the Geissele Super Duty. I'm not going to go into all the specs on it. Just understand that out of the box, this thing comes with much more for the money that than you get for the DD-M4 version 7. The downside to this one though, it's not ambidextrous. It's not fully ambi at least, like the new M4A1 Ris 3s from Daniel Defense. However, bolt carrier group, from what I understand, is way better. The barrel is definitely way better. On the Golden Web YouTube channel, they did a full auto burn down. This thing went over 1,000 rounds and the gas tube exploded. On the Daniel Defense, they only went 600-700 rounds and the barrels exploded. They have a way better trigger on them. They have better controls. They have better anodizing on their parts. It's just a better gun for the same exact price. If you want something that's sub MOA, this is the Blackout Defense Quantum DTL. I just can't even go into all the details on it. This thing is better than the Daniel Defense in every way imaginable, all the way down to being a sub MOA guarantee using the right ammo. You get to choose your different muzzle devices if you want QD. They have an incredible trigger, incredible safety, and incredible charging handle on here. This is literally the same price as that Daniel Defense, and you get so much more for the money. In fact, if you want to know more about that Blackout Defense, you can go check out this video right here. If you want to know more about the Geissele Super Duty, go check out this video right here. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I'll do my best to read the comments and answer them. Sometimes I'm slacking on that. But until next time, guys, I love you, and you guys stay sexy.